Disco Elysium is like a gamified version of an incredibly elaborate personality test. Dumb, emotionally distant, willing to try any drug that might open up the chakras of my mind, clumsy and unlucky as fuck.
Find booze and drink it. I guess we could do that. Well, hello. Someone seems to have found himself a bottle of alcohol. Hey, hey, hey. That, absolutely fucked my morale.
Yes, this is me. This game knows me better than any person possibly ever could, and as a result, it's the only thing I can think about. This is also my wife's first game in over a decade. The game she played before that was World of Warcraft. Hang on, when did that come out? 2004? Oh god, oh, it's happening again. This game confronts you with the existential dread of getting old and being beyond your prime, and realizing at the age of 40 that you don't like the job that you've been doing for the last 18 years and you'd like to give a try at being an internet celebrity. Wait a minute, I think I just described my own life. Oh god, what is it again? Jesus Christ! The setting of this game is a bit like someone said to a bloke, hey, what if we just set this game in current times, but just change the names of everything just to fuck with people? I mean, I swear to god, I thought this guy was gonna scream. This game is a hot cinema shot of midlife crisis. There were times when this game had me laughing so hard that I shot coke through my nose, and then it had me searching for a line of amphetamines to shoot up my nose. The game has me smoking again, and now I'm up to a pack a day. This game's a terrible influence on your kids, but it also makes me about 50% cooler than my age normally allows me to be. So, how does Disco Elysium grab you by the short hairs and not let go? Let's dig in, shall we? Now, I don't normally talk about graphics unless it's in service to a bit or for comedic effect, because I find that the very term graphics has been whored out to mean level of realism or graphical fidelity. Take a game like The Last of Us 2. Please. The only thing that people deigned to actually talk about in a positive light with that game were the graphics. They call it graphically rich and beautiful and realistic. And I can say that beyond a shadow of a doubt, yes, it does look beautiful at times. If my bar for beautiful was realistic, but it isn't. In fact, the closer a game starts to approach that realistic bar, the more fake it starts to look to me. And I'm real sensitive to that whole uncanny valley effect, I'll tell you what. And modern AAA games make my fucking eyes bleed. Okay, I know. I'm being too picky and shit, and I know that they can be considered to be beautiful, but goddammit, look at this expression and tell me what it's supposed to mean. Are you smiling? Are you trying to smile? Is that a smile? Is that what you call a smile? And yes, I know I'm being hypercritical, but goddammit, I'm more distracted by shit like this than I am impressed by it. I prefer to look at the graphics of a game and judge it by its cohesiveness of its art style. From the way its interface is designed to the way the characters in the world look in relation to the themes that the game and the story are putting front and center. If all of these elements meld together nicely, then the illusion of immersion is never broken. And Disco Elysium never breaks this illusion. The design of the world has a painterly aspect to it, where even mud and blood looks like they're represented by strokes of oil paint, where AAA games might be using normal maps and spec maps to fake the illusion of detail. The same can be said for anything resembling dirt or grime. The game's art style always seems to be trying to put you into this environment where everything is ethereal. The result is this muddy quality that seems to reflect the fugue state that your detective finds himself in. In this way, the art style reflects the themes that the game is trying to put forth. It's a world of black and white morality and beliefs with a sort of gray observer morality. The environment reflects the circumstances of the world nicely. Martinez is not yet, perhaps never will, recover from the shelling that they took after their little revolution failed. Concrete support pillars that are supposed to be holding up bridges that no longer exist are blown into pieces, and what remains is this concrete mosaic of cracks and dimples. The art style really nails that urban decay look. The character models convey everything you need to know without all that CPU taxing bullshit in AAA games. And yes, I know it's isometric, but yet again, that's another thing that AAA games will never do. Make an isometric RPG. Some of the character portraits lack detail, but they still manage to convey the character and the intentions, or sometimes even the aura of the person you're talking to. They're there not to add detail to an otherwise muddy character, but are there to inform the character without being explicit. The explicitness is in the dialogue.
Look! See? It's the fucking war pig! Try not to knock yourself out,
The portraits are more like staring at a person while squinting your eyes or letting them lose focus. The UI is functional while looking like it's part of a case file, where dialogue ends up on strips of what looks like film or microfiche. While the thought cabinet is laid out in a functional manner as well, but the art for the thoughts individually look like the chaotic thoughts that a person might have when an idea invades an otherwise pristine place, the chaotic, amorphous nature of random thoughts. Each process of thought, physiology, motor skills, and emotion are represented by portrait art, which represent the ghostly and ethereal nature of these thought processes that we're barely aware of, that influence what we do and how well we do it. And since these processes directly speak to us, it's like we're speaking to characters that live only within our own mind. And the portrait art makes it look like we're speaking to deformed monsters that live inside of our mind. This game has fucking everything I could ever possibly want, including art house shit that lets me drone on and for hours and hours to make myself sound like I'm smarter than I really am, according to my YouTube comments, that is. I score this art style a ripe banana out of 1. It's a real evocative and cohesive experience that satisfies my sucrose reward circuits. Well, what can I say? This game has a lot to offer mechanically, though its singular focus may put some people off. In other words, if you don't like to read, don't play this game. It's basically a gamified novel, but the mechanics that support the novel's structure are so fucking solid that if you manage to get yourself out of the first day, you most likely won't be putting it down anytime soon. Here's how the game works. You have 4 stats, each one representing 2 halves of a person. The first half being the peripheral nervous system, and the second half being the realm of the mind. There's intellect, psyche, physique, and motorics, or motorics, or however you pronounce that phony made-up word. Each of these stats have 6 associated skills, and any game that has a skill system is an automatic perfect game with no problems whatsoever. As for distributing these points into ability scores, that really depends on you. I've done 2 playthroughs of this game with each character specializing in different stats, and my wife did a playthrough with an utterly average cop with 3s in every stat. She also managed to do nearly everything there was to do in the game while I tore ass through the main storyline, and did what I could with my limited stats. And unfortunately, I had to forego missions on one playthrough and do the rest a second time through. I personally suggest you put a 5 into at least one stat, and lean on that to get you through most situations. Then distribute the rest however you like, but I personally went with a 5, a 2, a 4, and a 1. Why did I do this? Well, I wanted to see what would happen. And I was not disappointed, because my favorite skills ended up being the ones that had a 1 score in it. For instance, failing some of the savoir-faire checks was hilarity that brought me to the edge of tears. Ah! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh shit! I'm gonna hit that old lady! Oh no! Oh, man. This is the most amazing fucking shit I've ever seen in my life. Oh, fucking God. Oh, man. One moment you're running like the wind. Then you suddenly turned around and are giving him the finger furiously with both hands. Why? The lady in the wheelchair is right behind me, isn't she? That's true, yes. And it's worrying, but let's not fixate on that. Look at that stupid bartender. Instead, he has no idea what's going on. You and your fuck you fingers floating in the air. Barkeep's got his mouth agape like an idiot. You showed him. Why did I do this? Why did I use both my hands to flip him off? Why both? Watch out! Oh, man. No. Intellect makes you a sort of Sherlock Holmes of detectives. You're able to use skills like visual calculus to reconstruct crime scenes in a way where the ghostly images of past happenings appear in front of you, allowing you to figure out mysteries in a way that makes you feel smarter than the criminals who intended to fool you. While other skills like encyclopedia can fuck right the hell off. and more often than not contribute nothing to your investigation. Seriously, I wish there was a way to drink and snort the encyclopedia skill right out of your brain. Rhetoric is useful for some checks, but be careful how often you listen to it, because whoever wrote this game must have understood better than anyone how useless a degree in rhetoric actually was. Drama is a great skill. It allows you to lie to people in a convincing manner, as well as tell when others are lying to you. As you can imagine, it's a very useful cop skill. Conceptualization can help you conceptualize ideas that don't make sense to others, which there's a lot of shit in this game that doesn't make sense on the surface. But this skill in particular allows you to figure it out. Psyche is an important stat if you don't want to die a lot. You have 2 health stats, one called endurance, representing health points, and volition, which represents your morale. I've not died due to a morale failure, but I like to think my cop goes for Kim's gun and shoots himself in the mouth. Psyche represents your ability to connect with others and to connect with yourself. See, in a classic RPG move, your protagonist got so drunk the night before the game takes place that you almost died.
There is nothing. Only warm primordial blackness. Your conscious ferments in it, no larger than a single grain of malt. You don't have to do anything anymore.
And you can die here and end your game. Like, the game actually lets you die in the first few minutes just trying to get your fucking tie down off of a ceiling fan. Now that's the hallmark of true genius, my friends. Inland Empire, for instance, tends towards understanding yourself. It also tells you when you are happening upon a memory that will hurt you, and for our protagonist of Disco Elysium, well, just assume that everything you remember is gonna hurt, because our boy is a fuck-up of
hardcore
proportions. Esprit de Corps allows you to connect with your fellow policemen a little better, and at times, reliably allows you to tell what your partner is thinking, just by observing his reaction. Empathy allows you to connect with others, while authority allows you to run around saying,
I am the law.
Physique is my favorite skill line as it keeps you alive. So that's good. But it also allows you to resist pain with pain threshold. It also allows you to threaten people with violence with half-life. While skills like Shivers emulates that feeling that you get down the middle of your back when you realize something you had forgotten or sense someone creeping up behind you in the dark. Essentially, it makes you Spider-Man. While electrochemistry lets you see when someone is on drugs and gives you bonus experience points when you try drugs, it essentially allows you to be a narc, or a drug addict narc, which I guess is a bit redundant. Motorics is the line I have the least experience with, but it is incredibly useful in many situations. Savoir-faire allows you to fool yourself into thinking you could do superhuman shit, like teleport. Do I need to tell you anything more about that skill? I don't think so. Hand and eye coordination is important when handling everything important, like untangling some ferro tape from a thorny tree branch, to not totally botching up an autopsy. While perception allows you to see things in the world you wouldn't normally see, like hidden caches of items, hidden passages, and suspicious bullet holes in the walls. Composure is one of the most important skills in this line, especially early game, because without it, you will get trapped into situations where you don't want to say something completely ridiculous, but because you can't keep your cool, are forced to say something like, she rides the cot carousel until she's too old to ride it. Then she settles down with a provider, because it's fun. The level up mechanic is great because it happens often enough that you're never waiting around too long for a skill up, or a new thought cabinet, which we will get into later. The way skill checks work in this game is that there are red checks and white checks. The red checks are permanent, and if you fuck them up, you won't get another crack at it. The white checks are reopened after you've raised the skill associated with it, or if you discover one of the hidden bonuses that unlock through conversations, or through something as simple as holding a specific item in your hand. But almost every check, except for the few where someone is demanding an answer now, allow you to back out of the conversations and swap out your gear for a better chance of success. And if you are holding the right drugs in your hand, allows you to puff, swig, or gack up a line before you continue. Now, just imagine talking to a cop about something deadly serious, trying to decide if you're gonna shoot him or not. And you see him point up a finger as if to say, hang on a moment, and watch as he snorts a line of meth off the back of his hand. Could you ever stay mad at someone like that? I don't think so. Leveling up grants skill points, which can be used on skills, as we talked about before, or to buy new thought cabinet slots, or to forget old thoughts. What is a thought cabinet? It's one of the coolest goddamn RPG mechanics I have ever seen. I love this shit. Here's how it works. Every once in a while, a thought will stick in your head and become so nagging that your character will store it to later be evolved into something more than just a thought. It becomes a part of your identity. It starts shaping your outlook on the game world, and it even comes up in dialogue. There are passive bonuses that accompany it. For instance, if you're an intelligence-based cop, you'll want to get the actual art degree thought as soon as possible, because while it decreases your perception by 1, and hand coordination suffers because your hands literally shake with rage from how shit everything is, because as we all know, a critic can't look at anything without being disgusted by it. Every time you pass a conceptualization check with this thought, either passive or active, your morale is healed by 1, and you get 10 experience points. Now it only takes 100 experience points to level, so that's 10 passive checks to level, and conceptualization is used a lot if you invest in it. The game proceeds in a very open fashion. You're plopped into the world without a clue as to where you are or what you're supposed to be doing, and a player's disorientation is mirrored by the amnesiac cop you're playing as. It makes exploring the world, learning about its politics and history a fun experience, as you and your character are learning together. As you talk to people, the mystery of the dead man hanging from the tree, as well as the mystery of you, which is arguably the most intriguing one, grows and twists all over the place, like a proper mystery novel. And your skill checks are what get you to those places quicker. There are so many paths through the game that 2 playthroughs are not enough to see everything the game has to offer. And that is the most refreshing thing about this game, is that no matter how many times I've played the game, I'm always wondering what could have happened if I had made a different choice. Another neat mechanic is the hidden bonuses that sometimes come up with the various skill checks in the game. If you hover over a skill, you'll sometimes see a +1 bonus, and sometimes as far as a -20 penalty for various things like not carrying the right item. But sometimes those bonuses come from things you do and say, so for instance, if you explored the dialogue thoroughly before attempting a check, you might get a +1 bonus. But sometimes it's best not to choose every choice when asking questions, because the result is sometimes a penalty. It really forces you to pay attention to what you're doing, and sometimes other quests will help you pass checks on seemingly unrelated checks for other missions. It's a really great system that mimics almost perfectly what a dungeon master might do in a pen and paper game. In fact, this game is probably the closest thing to a pen and paper game I have played on the PC. This game is so careful with failure. Where most games see failure as a punishment, Disco Elysium sees failure as an opportunity. The game wants you to live with your consequences, but it doesn't force you to. It entices you to live with them, either through humor or through giving you a new path through the game that wouldn't have been available otherwise if you had succeeded. The game uses very few red checks, and when it does, it's in service to creating tension in the player at key moments. And at very specific parts of the game, these red checks change things in hilarious and unexpected ways. For instance, if you manage to fail red checks in the most important part of the game, you could end up with Kuno, the red-haired, foul-mouthed, meth-head kid, throwing rocks at the dead body as your partner instead of Kim. You might think to yourself, no! I liked Kim, but it's okay. Stick with it, and you might actually turn out to like what's happening. It might actually turn out to be the most satisfying experience you've had in a video game. This is the most true to the core tenets of role-playing I have seen a game approach. The team at Zaum set out with the expectations of making the best role-playing experience that they could, and by sticking to their design focus with a zealot-like enthusiasm for tabletop games, they managed to make even failure fun. The white checks in the game are the best example of this. The worst way you can play the game is to save scum before every dialogue, because failing in white check is often hilarious. And just because that path is closed doesn't mean that other paths aren't available, and failure plays a part in encouraging the player to explore more, because you are ever in search of the next level to reopen a check, or a dialogue option that gives you a bonus to that check that you've been meaning to unlock, which then unlocks that check for another try. The game encourages that type of playstyle by providing you a list of all white checks that you have open, waiting for you to retry, but it also never makes you feel like your progress is halted by the random number generator, because there's always something else to do. And those side quests often inform the main quest in unforeseen ways. In a way, failure allows you to explore the game more thoroughly. And in a game like this is super admirable, because most games would never think to make failure something fun.
You got it, sweet brother. Nothing upon nothing upon nothing.
The game plays triple duty with its atmosphere. It starts off with a dark sense of humor. You're bathed in a sea of inky black void, floating in the nothing of the unconscious, teeter-tottering between alive and dead.
The limbed and headed machine of pain and undignified suffering is firing up again.
Waiting for one step off the cosmic diving board before you fully commit to a game over screen. As you get to understand more about the world of Disco Elysium, you see that there is a struggle for the heart of Revachol between the puritanical fascists, the grasping communists, and the outsider neoliberals, as well as a much darker fourth faction, lurking in the background, watching, waiting, gathering information before judging whether you and many of Revachol's finest deserve to live. Many games have done the amnesiac thing well.
Hey, Chief, you okay? You playing corpse or you putting the blinds on the dusties?
But this game uses it as a strength, just like Planescape Torment did. But I have the balls, the absolute gall, to say that Disco Elysium did it even better. There's this pervading feeling of sickness that washes over you every time you come across something that triggers a memory, and it's usually something like, "Oh fuck, Harry, what did you do this time?" But this sickness deepens and deepens the further you get into the game as you become witness to the depraved, pitiable man that you used to be. The writers of this game knew their subject matter well in the political area. They managed to, at every turn, represent the truth of these ideological systems while wisely taking the piss out of them. My favorite is the communist thought cabinet conversation.
Hey, psst, look around. Psst, hey you. Who, me? Yes, you. Now, word on the street is you're ready to start building the communism again. Again? Yeah. You're ready to start building communism again. You've built it before. They've built it before. Hasn't really worked out yet. But hey, neither is love, huh? Should we stop building love too, huh? Love has worked out really well for me. I'm a love winner. Good, good. We need tender men like you building gargantuan communism. Word on the street, it's gonna be 10,000 times larger than any communism previously attempted by human beings. Is that right? Well, how come there's word on the street? You keep saying things like, down with the bourgeoisie, eat the rich, sodomize the landowners, impale all those who have more than 25 real in their pocket. Literally murder all human beings, regardless of their political beliefs. You know, that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, right, that sounds kind of like me. It's a funky style, very funky. So tell me, do you have any questions before we fire up the big communism builder? Or do we get right down to it? Wait, first, what is this communism even about? It's failure. It's about failure. Failure? Yes, abject failure. Total, irreversible defeat on all fronts. Absolutely vanquished, beaten, curb stomped, and pissed on until you came along. You see, you will reverse the fortune of the workers of the world. You alone against every living thing, against every human alive, 800 trillion real in the hands of an impossibly well-organized ruling class, towering city blocks of bankmen who have the ears of prime ministers, million-headed armies of nations, and the love of your own mother. You against the atom, the charm, and the spin, where the whole world failed. Matter failed to bend to human will. Human will failed to get out of bed and tie its laces. You alone single-handedly will rebuild the dreams of the working class. You are the last communist. Now get to work, comrade. Wait a minute. I want to read that again. Roll up your sleeves and start building communism. Oh yeah, get the firing squads and the animal wagons ready, baby. Wait, what? Firing squads? Didn't say anything about those. Yeah, too late to back out now. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few million eggs. Roll your sleeves up further and breathe in the pristine air. Finish the thought.
Yet the most common comment I get on my Twitter and YouTube when I talk about doing a Disco Elysium video, aside from, hey, that's awesome, I look forward to it, is I hate that fucking commie game or some other retarded bullshit. I honestly don't know what the fuck these people are talking about. If you don't believe me, scroll down in the comments right now and see what's down there. I'll be sure to pin the most retarded shit to the top of my page. I'm gonna regret that. Anyway, it's actually very ironic that this is people's assessment of the game, because the mentality that raises that vitriol is exactly the thing that Disco Elysium is trying to rage against. But we'll get into that later. The sense of dark, historic humor that's taking the piss is dotted throughout everything that Disco Elysium does, because to be serious with the absurd would be absurd. The whole game is absurd, but it doesn't forget to do the very thing that every good game should do, and that is to stand in opposition to the player. Hate is a very real thing in this game.
Fuck you, mail delivery box. Ouch.
And most of it is directed at you and your partner. People don't look too kindly on the police. In fact, the police don't even have real power in the game. So when someone confesses to murdering someone to your face, there's not much you can do about it if there's more than one heavily armed man guarding them. In other words, you either have to hope they're lying or throw yourself into a hail of bullets to be devoured by darkness. The setting feels like a real place, at least as real as Europe gets. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Europe is a fantasy tale country where knights still go off to slay dragons and shit, because I haven't been there and I refuse to believe it actually exists. There are parallels to real-world events in Disco Elysium, references to the Spanish Revolution and World War I, and it looks like, at the point where you start the game, that another war is about to set off, if you can't find out who lynched this prick. And you may be reading all the dialogue about this history and this fictional world thinking to yourself, why the fuck should I care? Nothing in this game is superfluous or extra. It exists to inform the narrative, to give meaning to senseless acts, and in the end, everything is important. Even things you thought were superfluous side content may have meaning to the story as a whole. No potential is wasted, which is probably the best thing you can say about a narrative. Radio announcer voice off. All right, let's talk about the ending, guys and gals.
And I don't mean that as a metaphor.
This game is about how life is not intrinsically meaningful, and that people find meaning in the various identities they choose, whether those identities are harmful or hurtful in the long run.
Goddamn. Oh, no! No fucking way! Are you fucking serious? At 80-fucking-3%? No! 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 That's bullshit!
Life is to be put up with, not enjoyed or hated. It simply is.
None of this matters now. None of this matters.
The game is a study of existential nihilism. You are metaphorically Sisyphus, pushing a boulder up a hill, and the only way to make such a task tolerable, especially when the boulder comes tumbling downhill after each lead turns into a dead end, is to smile and move forward with the task at hand. There is but one serious philosophical problem, claims Albert Camus in The Myth of Sisyphus, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living, that is the fundamental question of philosophy. Disco Elysium starts with a suicide attempt.
There is nothing.
A man trying but failing at even the act of ending his life. It deals with a man reborn who is forced to live and accept the sins of a man he used to be, but no longer remembers, and even though he may no longer be that man, by the time he has pushed the rock uphill, he will be forced to shoulder that burden or eternally blink so that the world no longer exists. In a way, the game is promoting ideas that are pivotal to the Buddhist belief as well, whether intentional or not. The belief that to transcend the pain and suffering that is pandemic throughout the world, one must be present, truly present, in the moment, without the ego or the id's interference. Shivers is a skill that brings your body in tune with the world around you, making you able to transcend the bounds of your mortal being and see your surroundings from on high, like a bird, and feel the pulse of the city. Read its past, present, and future. See beyond the scope of your human sight. The memory loss is the same idea as I laid out in my hypernormalization video. The idea that to do away with the person I was, I had to annihilate it totally and become something else, burn it to the ground, and start new. As you can see, this game gave me a raging nerd boner and connected with me on a spiritual level.
Do you remember the scent of your childhood?
Now it's time for the real spoilers, so this is a warning to preface the warning, so leave now if you haven't beaten the game. I need to talk about this ending because I've read in many forum posts where people have said that they were disappointed in the ending. And I can understand this because I'm probably the only high school dropout who read Nietzsche just for fun because he thinks it'll make him sound deep at parties, but listen, this was probably the most thought-provoking ending I have seen in a video game since I was a teenager playing the old BioWare Aurora Engine games. It's an ending that had me pacing back and forth trying to understand what was being said because I knew there was more than met the eye. It had me up until 8 a.m. in the fucking morning writing this, so let's dive right in. Let's go back to Camus. Is life worth living? The phasmid is a physical manifestation of this question, because to the insect, life is simply a duty that is thrust upon it. It is driven by instincts and impulses that it is barely aware of, where our detective is driven by much more, because he is aware that he is alive, while the insect has no choice but to keep living because it's an insect. The detective is like a mythical being to the insect, someone who can choose to annihilate the world if he chose to. And by annihilate the world, the insect means kill himself, because to the insect, it is some unimaginable feat that one could destroy the world simply by no longer choosing to exist. It's the whole perception is reality argument, that by no longer being able to perceive reality, reality stops existing. The detective has given his sensations a name and an identity. He is many in one, while the phasmid exists in states, not emotions. The phasmid describes its life as darkness being intruded upon by half-lit images. It sees shapes of plants and animals. Internal sensations, a swarm of sounds and tiny vibrations that run down into its limbs. Each feeling is beyond the creature's understanding. Existing feels shapeless and formless to the insect. It says that it doesn't have a soul, and that if it did, it wouldn't ache. We as humans are the only creatures that we know of that exist for a reason. At least we believe we exist for a reason. If we existed without reason, then this is seen as a sickness of the mind, a lapse in the reasoning of our emotions. This is the thing that separates us from nature. Our emotions have personalities, proclivities. Some make us introspective, some make us sad, Some of our thoughts drive us to bad habits and make us crave things that shorten our lifespan or put us in danger. That is why each of our skills in Disco Elysium have personalities, and we can actually converse with them. Because when the Phasmid tells us that it is put upon by life and that it simply exists, it is to provide contrast to our own lives as a detective in this world. What would we be if we were no longer a detective? If we were no longer the thing which gave us our identity? We would have to find another identity, but being reborn when more than half of our life is already over, it's a terrifying prospect. Like seeing that we have reached the apex of the mountain, only to see that fucking boulder roll back down the hill. That's why the ending has you begging to be allowed to continue the life you've been accustomed to. That's why the soldier stayed on the island for 43 years. Identity is what ties people to their patterns, their political identity, the occupational identity, and their social identity, as well as the identity they have assigned to themselves in spite of what others may think of them. The Phasmid is the absence of ego. It's called a miracle not because no one has ever seen it, but because it provides a revelation that is immediately ignored by the self-obsessed creature that discovered it. If you choose to tell the Phasmid who you are, you tell it that you're a detective. And in response, it tells you that it is also a detective. It was born to seek out sucrose rewards. Its purpose in life is simple. It asks you what you were born to detect, and you have three choices here. You could tell it that you were also born to seek out sucrose rewards, that you were born to find the killer, or that you were born to detect the Phasmid. If you chose the latter path, the Phasmid agrees. It says, "No one detected me for such a long time. For thousands of years I dithered out of sight, draped myself in greenery." You can deny this meaning, call it an accident, but you're no asshole. You know that this is what you were born to do. To find the thing that no one else could find, the miracle, the revelation. This conversation is not meant for Kim or Kuno, it is meant for you and only you, because you are the only person on the planet who could have this conversation. Only you are in touch with your emotions and the world around you and your imagination to have it. Kim is devoid of emotion. He neither expresses it or is in touch with it. And that is what makes you so good at your job. And at the apex of your skill, you find the one thing that is most important to you, this thing you didn't even know you wanted to find. And how does the game handle this revelation in the end? By railroading you into staying a cop. It doesn't give you an option out. It doesn't allow you to become a cryptozoologist or go back to being a gym teacher or even a bum that sleeps under a boat at night. Okay, well, technically it does allow you to do that, but not in the end. The game is having you circle back to where you started, which is why I think many people find this ending unsatisfying. Because of all the decisions the player gets to make throughout the entire game, the most important decision is the one you make at the end. The decision to stay as you are, or to become something else entirely. But that is why I mentioned Sisyphus. Because the ending of Disco Elysium is the boulder rolling back downhill with Harry Dubois at the top, watching the boulder roll down, bouncing off the surface of the mountain, resting near the bottom, waiting. And instead of Harry blinking and sending the world away, he descends the mountain to do it all again. My next boulder push will be Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, so be sure to check it out when you get a chance. Also, I recently signed an agreement with GOG, and we have a sale for Disco Elysium, so if you want 25% off the game, use the code below in the description, and you'll get 25% off the game. So now's the best time to buy it, really. And we'll have future deals for hopefully all the videos that I do in the future. I have a representative that I've been talking to, and he's been awesome. He's been excellent. He managed to get this in just the span of a day, so, you know, I just want to thank you personally, Arthur. You've been awesome. Thank you. I also wanted to say thank you to everyone that supported me on Patreon. We're almost already to the goal of turning off ads completely, so for that I am eternally grateful. Thank you again. I mean, I really want to say thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart. You guys have made it so that all of the stress has basically been lifted off of my shoulders, and I'm allowed to actually do these kinds of videos again. I don't have to worry so much about YouTube. I don't have to worry so much about the subscriber count. I don't have to care about things peripheral to the act of making these videos. So I cannot say thank you enough. You guys are fucking amazing. Thank you so much. And for all those who watched the video, if you guys are interested in supporting me on Patreon, there will be a link in the description below. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody, and peace out. Love you. Bye.